Hey there, this is the sequel or the prequel, depending which one you do first, of my Hip 1 class that I posted at the beginning of the week. So welcome to Hip 2, very original names. This one's going to be a little bit shorter than the other one because we've only got two myofascial groups left in our hips to work on, and it's our groins and our glutes and the IT band that runs on the side of our thighs. So prop wise, I've used the same as in the first class. We have a block, we have a strap, we have cushions, but if you have bolsters or a bunch of books to replace the block, or a belt or a scarf to replace the strap, even just some rolled up blankets can work as a prop instead of cushions, or even a block sometimes. So gather what you need so that we can begin the class. Please just only go as far as you feel like you want to go today. Don't push, don't strain, don't force. That kind of goes against the yin practice altogether. Have some awareness of your body and figure out what works for you today. I will give a lot of variations throughout the practice, but if something does not feel right, or if it's causing you pain or great discomfort, I would urge you to come out and just come to lay on your back, and then you can join in. Or play around if you have an advanced practice or an advanced knowledge of functional yoga. Feel free to play around with your body. If you know what works better for you, you can always substitute certain poses. Otherwise, we get started. So I'm going to give you, if you're used to my classes back when I used to teach person to person, I always play around with sort of similar poses for the groin group, but today we're going a little bit different, and I was just thinking about this earlier while I was planning the class, that I don't think I've ever taught this pose that we're coming into. So this is a half frog, half butterfly, but half dragonfly pose. And so if you're familiar with our frog pose, we usually start in our baby frog here, and we start to come down until we find that first sense of tightening in the inside of the thighs, that first resistance, that first tug. Some people like to bring their feet out a little bit wider, bring their pelvis up a bit, and then play around until they find that stretch. So what we're doing today is half of that and half of our dragonfly pose. So starting with, we're going to come into a wide child's pose, but then we're going to extend out our left leg. And we start to come down, and we start to see if we start feeling it on this side. But if you're a little bit more, you might even be feeling it on the other side. I certainly feel it more intensely on my left side, the side that's in the dragonfly pose. But if I start to open out my feet behind me, then I start feeling it a little bit on the other side. If you prefer to sit as if in your baby frog, your small frog, please feel free to do so. If you want to come up and see if that works better for you, please do so. Remember that you can always prop your torso up if you need to, with a bolster, even with a block. You can even prop your head. Maybe having it underneath the torso, so it's decreasing that weight, that gravity. Play around with what works for you today. Find that perfect pose. We're going to be here 3 minutes. We're going to do the same length of time that we did in the first class. And as I encouraged in that first hip 1 session, we're going to target the groins and the glutes a couple of times in this class. You don't have to do them all. The point of these 2 classes was so that you could start mixing and matching depending on what you feel like doing on that day. So this is just more understanding the poses, playing around with them in our own bodies and seeing what works. And then maybe on other days you pick a different pose. You mix it in with the hip 1 that targets the other 3 myofascial groups of the hips, the hip flexors, the quads, the hamstrings. Relax in the pose. Commit to some stillness. Notice if you're engaging. If you are, just let it go. With a big exhale, releasing the muscles, releasing any tension. Often with asymmetrical poses, I find it a little bit easier to play around and experiment in to find a good edge. You can intensify or decrease quite easily when you're focusing on just one side. Taking one last big inhale in. And slow exhale out. Really slowly start to make our way out of the pose. And just releasing the legs. I'm going to stay sitting up for the rebound, but feel free to lie down or to rest on your side, whatever allows you to take a moment of being effortless so you can notice the effects of the pose. Notice any sensations, tingling or numbness or pins and needles. Do those sensations move around or do they stay in the same place? There is no wrong or right answer to these. Everyone will experience a different rebound. Just like everyone will experience a different pose. The effects, however, the results should be fairly similar. Slowly we start to engage the body again. We start bringing movement to fingers and toes. We stretch our arms overhead, bringing the knees to the chest. If you're lying on your back, you can start rolling and swaying side to side, and then just coming back up to a comfortable seated position. And if you are already seated, we shall start to transition to the other side. Know that what worked for you on the other side is not necessarily going to work on the other. So take that time to experiment, to figure out what feels right on this side. So we come into our child's pose, wide kneed, as if we were beginning to get into our frog pose. And then we extend the right leg this time. And we start to bring our torso down, and maybe here is enough. Remember to support your head or your torso with a block or a cushion if you need. Maybe we start to bring the pelvis up a bit. And we move it backwards and forwards. Maybe we open up that left leg out a bit, bringing the foot wider out. Notice what feels better. Notice where is the right amount of stress in that inside of the thigh, and then start coming to a stillness, start settling your thoughts, your breath. There's a possibility that some of you feel these groin stretches quite intensely in the inside of the knees. I certainly do. And one of our muscles in the groins, the tendon, crosses over the knee joint. And so that's why sometimes we feel it there. It's not a bad thing. Just make sure you're not going to any extreme with it. Maybe putting a little bit of a bend in the knee allows that to go away, and that feels better. So again, experiment. Maybe a rotation of the foot. So rotating also the hip bone might alleviate that a little bit. That tendon is also connective tissue, so ultimately, it is part of what we target in our yin practice. However, like anything in our yin practice, it's not about going further, it's not about straining, it's not about forcing. Just feel it to the right extent. If it feels too much, come out a little bit. Taking one last big inhale in. Slow exhale out. And really slowly using your arms, your hands to allow you to come out of the pose. And come to lie on your back or stay seating. Whatever is comfortable for you to take a moment to feel the effects, to feel the energy flow, the blood flow. It's being released after holding a pose for a number of minutes. Slowly we start to bring the movement back to our fingers, our toes. We stretch our arms overhead, pointing and flexing the feet. Hugging the knees to the chest. Maybe swaying a little, maybe rocking a little up and down. And come back to seated. So we're going to move on to our glutes now. And again, I'm going to sort of take you through a sort of graduation of the pose, which is from our deer pose to our sleeping swan pose. Because ultimately, that front leg is kind of doing the same thing. And it's your lever leg, the opposite leg, that sort of dictates how you feel you're going to feel the pose. And it's kind of cool, and I kind of love that. And it means that hopefully in there's something for everyone too. So we're going to start in our deer pose, which is we're going to bring our right leg into as if it was a half butterfly, and then we're going to flip the left leg, left foot behind us. It might mean that you're sitting a little bit like this. That's okay. Hopefully, as we move through this progression from a sort of small deer pose to a wider deer pose all the way to a sleeping swan, in there somewhere you're going to hopefully find a little bit of stability and a good stress for your glutes. We're targeting the glutes on our right side here, and maybe the AT band that runs down the side of the thigh. So look out for in that area for something that feels good to you. But I'm going to turn around so that you can see this progression. We're going to start here, and we start bringing our torso down. Maybe we're already feeling it and it feels great, in which case feel free to stay. Notice where you feel it. Like, I'm only feeling it in my IT band here. If I go a little bit further down, I start to feel it a little bit more in my glutes. Not really much happening there. So then I decide maybe I want to change things up, and I bring my left foot back a bit and the knee back a bit. And I see if this works. Feel it a little bit more in my glute. But I feel a little more unstable, like my pelvis is sort of throwing my torso to that right side. So maybe I start bringing that left leg back a bit more. And I see how this starts to feel. And maybe I throw that left leg all the way out behind me and straighten it out. And now I'm in my sleeping swan or pigeon pose. That front foot, as in any of these glute poses, adjust it how you need it, depending on your external rotation. Maybe it's parallel to the mat. Maybe it's closer down to your pelvis. Maybe your knee sticks out a bit more to that right side. Maybe it's all the way in the midline. It will make a difference to how you feel that pose. So play around. Find your little deer pose. See if that works for you, if it feels nice. Play around with that back leg. Play around with that front leg once you've found a comfortable position with that back leg. But then we start to settle in, settling the breath, settling the mind, relaxing the muscles, releasing any tension. Feel free to adjust throughout the minutes that we stay in the pose. I mean, we're here 3 minutes, but also if you wanted to stay longer, pause the video, catch up a little later. If you want to stay shorter, come out of it when you're ready. If you don't want to do a pose at all, you don't have to. Remember that this is your practice, and what you need today is what you should take from it. Notice what might be coming up in the mind, what emotions, what thoughts. And whatever they are, try to not get involved, try not to become part of that story. Instead, just notice and try and come back to the awareness in the body of your target area, your glutes. How is it feeling now compared to when you first got into the pose? I usually find that if the mind has started to wander, it's a pretty good indication that that initial tension, discomfort, tightness that you felt in that area has probably dissipated a bit because your mind is now no longer focused on it. Started thinking about things that have to be done or things that have been done. Taking one last big inhale in. And slow exhale out. And really slowly using again that strength in your arms and your hands to come out the pose, come to lie on your back, come to sit up. Take that moment to feel. I mentioned this in most of my classes, but a rebound is not just a physical sensation. We work on our meridians, these energy pathways, when we're in a yin pose that are found in our connective tissues, and these meridians are all paired up and linked with elements. Each element has an emotion associated with it. It's normal that when releasing a certain area, certain emotion either releases or rears its head. So notice without judgment, without fear, just notice what comes up. Know that it's part of the process, part of the release of the pose. Slowly we start to bring movement again to our fingers and toes. Stretch our arms overhead, pointing and flexing the feet. Hugging the knees to the chest. Maybe swaying from side to side. Maybe all the way to the side into a twist. Whenever you're ready, we come back as we move into the other side of our deer/swan. So this time, it's going to be our left leg in front of us, our right leg behind us. Notice the difference straight away, or at least I certainly do. I think for some people it's not as obvious. I have a very sort of varied range of motion between my left side and my right side. The other way, I have much better external rotation on this side, better internal on this side, and so when I'm on the other side, not much of a problem. When I'm on this side, I definitely feel like I'm already being pushed to the side by my femur bone, my thigh bone sort of pushing into the pelvis and wanting to swing it that way. And that's all right, because in between these parameters, there is a pose that fits me on this side and on that side. So let's find out what it is. So this time we start. Know also that just because you're in an expression of the pose on the other side does not have to be the same as this side now. So if it looks different, that's okay. The target area is the same. So we start with our little baby deer and start to come down. Play around with the front foot. And then we start to play around with the back foot. We start to bring it further behind us. All the way into our sleeping swan. And when you find something that works, settle down. Soften. Start to let go of the engagement of the muscle, any tightening. Breathe it out. Soften your mind, your breath. notice as the time goes by, if anything changes, if your mind engages and starts taking you elsewhere, does that have an effect on the body? Do you tense up all of a sudden without even noticing that you have? Or, it's very, all of our emotions have a sort of physical consequence. Imagine yourself when you're angry, what happens to our body physically. Our body temperature will rise, our breath will become shallower, we might start sweating, we might start tightening, clenching our jaw, our shoulders. When we're sad, have a tightening in the chest, tightening in the gut. All these emotions have a physical reaction. So when our brain starts to wander off and start thinking of things, good or bad, it will translate into our physical body. So just notice if it does, try to come back to the present moment, try to let go of that emotion. Taking one last big inhale in, and slow exhale out. Really gently walk ourselves out of the pose, release the legs, and find your rebound. Gently start to bring our awareness back and our movement back to our fingers and toes, and we stretch, we pull, and we scrunch. And we just start to reactivate the body. I mean, I have my sort of go-to in my classes of how your yang between your yin should be, but literally what we're trying to do is just sort of reactivate the body, send that blood pumping through again before we settle down for another pose. So if you feel like doing anything between these moments, please feel free to do so. Do a little mini vinyasa, stand on your head, stand on your hands, go crazy. But eventually we will all come back up to seated. As I take you back to our groins now. And again, I just realized as I was thinking, see, even my brain continuously works over time, even when I'm supposed to be present and aware. It's just natural. But I was thinking that this is also a pose that I rarely teach to target the groins. I teach it a lot to target the spine. But like our deer and sleeping swan progression, we're going to do a similar one with this one too. So we're going to start by bringing soles of our feet together, our knees fall out to the side. You could be here, you could be here. If you feel like you're not really getting the momentum to be able to fold forwards, my pelvis tends to sort of flip back a little bit, and it, without any support underneath my sit bones, I find it like I effort quite a lot to stay in these forward folds like this. So I grab my little cushion and I prop myself up, and I sit with my sit bones sort of on the edge of whatever prop I've got. And this allows me much more momentum, so where I can just sort of hang in the gravity without having to sweat my way through a pose, trying to keep myself there for 3 minutes. The height can vary. You might be really high. I think that's okay. Find what works for you, that you find that momentum and gravity to fold forwards and stay down without your body wanting to push you back up. Now, again, the inside of our thighs here. So as we start to fold forwards, notice if you start feeling anything here. Notice where you feel it. For instance, like when I was in the previous pose, I was feeling it. I was feeling much broader stretch in the sense I was feeling it all the way down the inside of my thigh. When I come into butterfly, possibly this is why I don't teach it a lot, is because of my personal experience with it, is that I only feel it in here. I feel nothing on the sort of further down on the inside of my thighs. Obviously this removes completely that knee thing where you feel that little pulling on the inside of the knee. So this might work for some, might feel great. If it doesn't, we can. In fact, what I'm actually also feeling is like a real twinge in the back of my butt. And that's the compression. It's my hip bone, my thigh bone, the head of it pressing into that socket, my hip socket. And there's a little pinch and a little, so I don't like it. It's really now occurring to me this is exactly why. And it took me, let's say, a little shorter than a minute to start feeling that compression, because initially that's all I started feeling. And this is why, take your time settling into a pose. Because you don't feel everything all at once. It's not like, okay, yes, no, I feel compression here, I feel tension here. It's your body takes a bit of time to let you know what's going on, so that you can filter through the different layers of the stresses in the body. So the other options is you can start going sort of maybe a bit of a squat. I don't like this so much because again it sort of stops me from folding forwards. If I start to widen my legs out a little bit, I actually start enjoying it a lot more. Again, I feel it just really deep inside here, nowhere else in the thighs. But as we keep walking our feet out, it starts moving a little bit broader, but we can go all the way to straightening it out into our dragonfly. So from butterfly to a sort of squat kind of pose, to a wider squat, to a wider squat, all the way to here. So play around with that graduation, that sort of progression of the pose. Find what works for you today. And by the way, know that just because you think you found something today that might be new and you haven't experienced it before and you think, my God, this is it. This is the pose I've been waiting for forever. It feels so good. Tomorrow it might not. Such is life. And so just don't become attached to these things. They change, they progress. Our brain gets bored of it. That initial excitement no longer happens. If anyone is thinking of doing an online course, I've actually just started Science of Wellbeing, and it's one of Yale's most popular classes, and in essence it sort of analyzes from a psychological point of view happiness, and we measure our happiness and then we analyze how stupid our brains really are, as they tend to push us in the direction of things that don't actually truly make us happy. There's a lot of surveys and data collected throughout that they show you throughout this course, and turns out that in a lot of these things, good job, a good salary, love, the perfect body, those things don't bring us so much happiness, not as much as we think it does, and yet it's kind of what we end up pursuing, so spending so much of our time and effort trying to achieve. Rambling on, but if it interests you, go look it up. I think it's on Coursera.com. It's an app with lots of different courses, online courses on there from different universities. It's pretty easy and fun course, so it's nothing too challenging or that requires too much of your time. It's got cute little tasks that you have to do, set yourself gratitude and savoring and acts of kindness and social connection, which at the moment is proving to be a little bit tricky, but you find ways. Anyway, almost time for our pose to be up, and I've rambled throughout the whole thing. You can consider this my social connection today. Taking one last big inhale, slow exhale, using that strength in your arms and your hands to slowly walk yourself back up, taking your time, exit slowly. Use your hands to bring your legs together or your knees together if you're in your butterfly or squat pose. Just come to lie down. Notice the effects. Notice what's going on in the body and in the mind. Gently we return the movement back to fingers and toes. We stretch. We can bring our knees to our chest and move around a little bit. We're going to return our feet to the mat as we come into our last pose for the glutes. And so this is, so in Yin, or at least the lineage of Yin that I teach, we have sort of 5 archetypal poses, Yin poses, and each one sort of targets a different area, but we group everything that sort of targets that area in the same category. So for our glutes, we had our deer, and we had our sleeping swan, and we have our figure 4. And basically, one of the main differences is just that we're lying on our backs doing it and not sitting up. Now, for some people, and I've had so many students in the past in my classes that this happens to, some people sitting and leaning the torso forwards, it just doesn't work. They get these weird compressions in their hips, and it really doesn't feel right. Whereas when they come to lie on their backs, because now what we're doing is instead of bringing our torso forwards, we're bringing our legs towards our torso. And for some reason, that for them actually works. So if you hated the poses that we did earlier, maybe this works better for you. So we're going to bring our right ankle onto our left knee. And slowly we start to bring that left knee towards our torso. Now, just like I explained in that previous post, your external rotation hasn't changed here. So it's not just because it feels like it's a different pose, it doesn't mean that is going to change in your body. So again, play around with whether that ankle is close to your knee or is closer to your pelvis. Play around with whether that knee is out to the side more or down your midline. You can reach with your arms or your hands either behind the thigh, in front of the shin, or you can grab a strap. And I kind of love doing it this way. And you loop it around your thigh, and you do it up. Even just tie a knot in it. And then I wear this like a handbag. And I tighten it until I get the desired effects in the glutes, maybe in the IT band of that right thigh. Some people, they prefer to have the strap on the other side, on the other shoulder. This will change maybe the abduction of the knee. Is it more out, more in? But once you've found somewhere comfortable, take a moment to let go and settle yourself into the pose, softening, letting go of the breath, letting go of your thoughts, letting go of any tightening of the muscles. Pose is also great done against the wall, so if you have a wall near you, just put yourself in this pose, but with the foot against the wall, the left foot against the wall, so that you're being supported by the wall to keep that knee flexed. If I had to choose what at the moment is my go-to pose for glutes, it would certainly be this one. Your arms don't have to be overhead like mine. I'd be out to the sides, T position, resting on your belly or on your chest. Taking one last big inhale in, and slow exhale out, and really gently making your way out the pose. Take that moment to notice what's going on. Bring that awareness to the body, to the mind. Gently we start to transition to the other side. This time it's our left ankle on our right knee. Now make sure as you bring that right knee towards you that you play around with that position of the ankle, a bit closer to the knee, a bit closer to the pelvis. Is it somewhere in between? You can hold on with your hands into your thigh or your shin. Otherwise, use your strap. Use it like a handbag to bring you into the pose. Adjust it. You might not need what you needed on that side. Our preferences, our habits are also play a part in the difference between our two sides, our left and right. You know, the leg we lead with, we're strongest with, the hand or arm we write with. And because of those habits and preferences, our body develops differently from one side to the other. You might have a tighter side, a looser side. And that's okay. Nothing to freak out about. And nothing to write home about. We are all so unique, just like snowflakes. Not one of us is the same. Allow yourself to melt into the pose, letting go of all effort, of all strain, of all engagement. Suspend yourself in the moment. With awareness of what's going on in the body and the mind, with detached awareness. Check in with yourself. You remember how you felt at the beginning of the class? And check in and notice how you feel now. Notice if anything's changed, shifted. I'm a big fan of, I teach long held poses. Usually 5 minutes is my go-to at least. But and I forget that even just 3 minutes, few poses can make me feel so much lighter in the world. Taking one last big inhale in. Slow exhale out. Really slowly and gently we start to exit and release the pose. Taking your time. Come to find your final rebound through Shavasana. Feet are comfortable, width apart. Allow them to roll in or out. Same goes for your palms of your hands. Do they face up naturally? Do they want to face down or to your side? Allow them to be wherever they want to be. I know so often we're cued to keep the palms lifted. But in yin, if they don't want to go there, don't let them be there. Allow the whole body to be heavy, relaxed, soft. Soften the belly, the chest, the breath. If you would like to stay longer in your Shavasana in this moment, pause the video, stay as long as you need. Otherwise we start to bring a bit of movement to our fingers and our toes. Stretch the arms overhead and pointing and flexing the feet. Bringing the knees to the chest, giving them a hug. I'm going to come to rest on my left side. Come to rest on whichever side feels good. Eventually making your way back up to a comfortable seated position. Cross-legged, half lotus, lotus. You could be sitting on your heels. Just sitting tall. Relaxing the shoulders down, crown of the head feels like it's reaching up to the sky. Allow there for it to be a little bit of length in the back of the neck. Just tuck the chin ever so slightly if it's not already. Soften the jaw, create space in the mouth. Soften the area around the eyes. With the deepest of gratitude, we bring our hands to our heart. May we have good thoughts. May we speak good words. May we do good deeds. Namaskar. Thank you everyone for following. I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed today's class. It's unusual that I get to practice what I'm teaching, so this is definitely one of the beauties of doing these online classes for me. It's obviously what my body needed today. I hope this proves useful for you too one of these days when you need it, and I hope to catch you for the next class. Thank you.